So we just got the announcement from Jonathan Gannon that Kyler Murray will be starting this week for the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals, one win on the season, 1-8. We thought that they might be getting themselves into the Caleb Williams sweepstakes. We thought there was a chance that we never see Kyler Murray at all this season. Week 10, here we are. We're getting to see Kyler Murray go out there on the field, play some games. And we know Kyler Murray, when he has been healthy in the past, has been a game-changing talent. Kyle, what are your expectations for him the rest of this season, knowing that he might be playing for his job in Arizona?
Yeah, I don't know what to expect because this is such a unique situation. Since the very beginning, they had planned for Kyler Murray to come back this week. This is according to some expertise and inside knowledge that I have with the Cardinals organization. The plan had always been to activate him in week 7 from the pup list and then give him essentially a 3-week training camp to build up to this game at home against the Atlanta Falcons. Now, the communication and how we got here has been really wonky by the Cardinals because they said on Monday of last week that Josh Dobbs was going to be the starter for the next week. And then they said Clayton Tune was going to be the starter. And then 24 hours later, Josh Dobbs was traded. So it's been a very confusing way to get to this point with the Cardinals, but they have basically followed the plan that they had in line since the start of the year of Kyler coming back for this week of the season. And at the start of the season, if you had said the Cardinals would have the worst record in the NFL come this week of the season, I think most people would believe it, right? They thought the Cardinals were tanking and tearing this thing to the ground and not really giving Kyler Murray the best support system. But Kyler Murray is their franchise quarterback for now, and they are committed to putting him in the best position to succeed after already putting him in a terrible position to succeed by getting rid of the coach and getting rid of the receivers and tearing down the roster and everything else. So besides all of that stuff, they are now committed to putting him in the best position to succeed with the two deck, in a deck of cards, we're giving him the best hand possible after already throwing out 46 of the cards in the deck. So now we'll see what happens once they've given him nothing to work with. They are committed to putting him in the position to succeed for 8 weeks.
See, I wouldn't talk about getting rid of Cliff Kingsbury as such a con in this discussion. I don't think that that's
but they
a
went
real
and
net
hired
negative.
Jonathan Gannon. That's the thing. They went and hired Gannon afterwards.
Don't
by the way,
disrespect the pew pew guy. Don't disrespect Jonathan Gannon and his pew pews.
He's the 32nd highest paid coach in the NFL. Their offensive coordinator is in his first time ever calling plays for an NFL offense, and that would be Drew Petzing, which, by the way, has come with pretty damn mixed results because for the past, 5 weeks, the Cardinals have gone from being the 16th ranked offense in the NFL after the 49ers game to the 29th ranked offense in the NFL. So it's been brutal. I also looked up this stat so far this year of how futile the Cardinals are. The Cardinals have played more quarters this season in which they scored 0 points than quarters in which they scored any amount of points. They scored 0 points in 19 quarters. They have scored any amount of points in 17 quarters. So it has been futile on offense. They have, depending on which metric you look at, the 32nd or 31st ranked defense in the NFL. It has been a brutal, brutal season for the Cardinals. And now we're going to insert a quarterback that they just paid $180 million fully guaranteed to about 15 months ago.
So the Cardinals this season, they started off at least the first 4 weeks as one of the scrappier teams in the NFL. And I think a lot of people are starting to change their tune on Jonathan Gannon in the sense that they thought it seemed like he was motivating these guys to play for him. Like guys came in, they were hitting hard. They were a physical team. What they did to the Cowboys in that week 3 game kind of turned a lot of heads. Like, okay, this team might have something there. We don't know what they have, but they might have something. So what's changed in the last 4 weeks? Well, James Conner has been hurt for a significant portion of that. I think that James Conner, when you look when they were having the most success this season, you mentioned they were the 16th ranked at one point on offense, James Conner was healthy during that stretch. James Conner has been out since that stretch, and I think that has severely hindered them. You also mentioned you had a Clayton Tooney game in there as well. You can kind of say that probably diminished a lot of their stats. Obviously, what the Browns were able to do to them this past week, push them around, make them look incompetent. That's took a big hit to any stat line they had for the season. So if I was to take out that game and I was to reinsert the games with James Conner back into the mix, I would say they might be closer to that And I do consider that Kyler Murray is an upgrade over Joshua Dobbs. Even if you're not a big Kyler Murray fan, I think most people would agree he's an upgrade over Joshua Dobbs. So I get Kyler and I get James Conner back, and I get a roll through the rest of the season with that group of guys. Is Hollywood Brown still active for them, or is he like hurt too? Yeah, he's still out there.
No, he's still there.
Yeah, so I mean, they still have a little bit to work with. And we talked about this in another video when we talked about who's going to get the number one overall draft pick. I think I can see the Cardinals winning a couple games more this season, at least one. They played the Bears a little later in the season. They have another game against the Rams. If you told me Kyler came out and was his normal headache to deal with on defense, because Kyler Murray, he's a problem sometimes. The fact that he's able to scramble around, move the pocket, he still has a good arm because, hey, he had a lower leg injury. He didn't have a injury to his arm. He still has that cannon on his right shoulder, So I think that he's still going to be able to do that and make some plays. They're going to win some games in which they shouldn't, just because they do have a quarterback that can do some crazy bullshit sometimes. I go back to that game against the Raiders last year where they were down like 20 points, and Kyler had that one play where he had like 50, 60 yards just to make the 10-yard completion for the touchdown. Like Kyler Murray, the fact that he could do that, we'll see. Obviously, banking on a knee injury kind of reducing a little bit of that, but still, I think that Kyler Murray has enough talent to at least will this team to a little bit more than what they've done through this early 1-8 stretch of the season. And James Conner, if he's back and healthy and running like he did at the start of the season, I don't know. I think that there's something to this team, especially when I compare them against, again, the lower part of the teams on the lower end of the spectrum as well.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Jonathan Gannon's job is tied to Kyler Murray at this point. Like, if they bring in a new quarterback, they are not keeping the head coach in order to develop that new quarterback. And I think that that's still probably up in the air on which direction the Cardinals are going to go from this point forward. And yeah, I think they would be best served committing to Kyler Murray because Kyler Murray has shown you evidence that he can be a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback in the NFL. I mean, his QBR numbers for his career right now, I believe, are 15th his rookie year, then 11th, and then 7th in the league, and then he dropped down to 19th in that last year where him and Cliff Kingsbury actively hated each other and did not talk to each other for 10 weeks during the season, which is a real thing that is reported to have happened, according to Jeremy Fowler. The quarterback coach was the mediator between Kyler and Cliff for about 10 weeks before Kyler tore his ACL and just left the team at that point. But the Cardinals are in a very interesting position where the quarterback and the head coach are now tied to each other, even though they've never played a single game with each other. The sample size of evaluation is going to be very small on Jonathan Gannon at this point. And by the way, organizationally, they've committed to a rebuild, and so they haven't put these people in the best position to succeed. It's a very interesting circumstance that they find themselves in. The other part of it is Hollywood Brown is playing for a contract right now, and him and Kyler Murray are college buddies who work out together in the offseason and all sorts of stuff like that. Hollywood Brown is playing for his future on the Arizona Cardinals at this point. So it feels like everything's up in the air in Arizona. All these options are on the table, and a lot of it is going to be contingent on what draft pick they end up getting. But I also don't think that 8 games is really enough of a sample size to do a proper evaluation on the future direction of your franchise. You're kind of just guessing blind and putting your faith in Monty Ossenfort, the general manager, and Dave Sears, the assistant GM, on how much they like Kyler Murray, how much they'd be willing to sacrifice to tear this thing to the ground and start over again. Because I think their hope is that this year is going to be the worst of the losing. I think their hope is that this will be the highest draft pick they have, regardless of how the season ends.
Now, you did mention the improvements in Kyler Murray over the years, and I think a big part of that was when they acquired DeAndre Hopkins, because Kyler Murray's stats with and without DeAndre Hopkins on the field are very jarring. Like, I don't have them in front of me to be able to kind of like just spout them off, but
I'll give you one real quick off the top of my head. Last year, when DeAndre Hopkins was suspended for the 6 games, and then when Hopkins came back and Kyler tore his ACL in week 13, in just the 6 weeks that they had together, and Hollywood Brown got hurt, I think, in like week 8 of that year. So like Hollywood Brown and DeAndre Hopkins played like 100 snaps together in their entire Cardinal career, which is just really messed up that they only got 100 snaps with both of those receivers. In those 6 games, DeAndre Hopkins had the most receptions in the NFL during that 6-game stretch with Kyler Murray. A season that was a complete catastrophe. DeAndre Hopkins was number 1 in the NFL in receptions during just those 6 weeks, and that was the worst of the 3 seasons they had together.
Yeah, so again, no DeAndre there now. Now he will have only Hollywood Brown and, obviously some complementary pieces around that. Like, do you think that Kyler Murray, his NFL future could potentially be screwed over by this? Because let's say, again, we mentioned the possibility the Cardinals could be drafting a quarterback. That next team that acquires him, do you think it's fair to base Kyler's value off of a team that didn't really set up this roster well for him to succeed coming off of the injury?
That's what's so interesting about this situation is that not only if the Cardinals are committed to drafting a quarterback, not only would they then have to move Kyler Murray, everyone in the league would know that they're trying to move Kyler Murray and know that in order to do it, the Cardinals would have to absorb some of the money on his contract, right? They would like, no team is going to trade for Kyler Murray at $48 million per year, or I think it's like goes up to 59 next season for Kyler. No one's going to pay that for Kyler Murray. So the Cardinals would have to pay that down to 40 million a year or 35 million a year, maybe even less than that, depending on what a team is willing to take on and how much also the Cardinals would be willing to eat in money in order to get a better draft pick. Like, this is all a complicated game that gets very, very confusing if the Cardinals choose the path of most resistance, which is we're going to pivot off of Kyler Murray and draft Caleb Williams. Like, if they make that call, I mean, I wouldn't do it personally, but if they do decide to make that call, it's going to get very complicated for an organization that has dropped the ball at basically every turn.
So where does Kyler Murray rank in the NFL? Assuming that he comes back healthy, where does he rank in the NFL and quarterbacks at this moment? Like, what tier is he falling in? Because we've seen that he's like, he obviously moved down, and then we saw the insertion of newer quarterbacks into that upper tier above him. Like, I'm thinking off the top of my head, obviously I know Patrick Mahomes is better. I think Josh Allen is still better. I think Lamar's still better. Jalen Hurts, I think, has surpassed him, obviously. Joe Burrow is better. Trevor Lawrence, I would take today above him. Kirk Cousins, if he was healthy, I would take above him. Dak, questionable, but I think that they are similar. So we could have a stat discussion there. I'm forgetting people. I mean, CJ Stroud has looked really good too. Yes, Jared Goff. Jared Goff would be the top NFC quarterback right now today, I would say. Well, Geno Smith has been interesting. Like, I think Kyler's still better than Geno, but I think that Geno Smith is still there. Deshaun is still, I don't know. I don't know what to really make of him since he's come back. He was closer to 5 at one point, but now he's what, closer to 15?
Probably. I mean, at the start of the year when I do quarterback rankings, just to kind of like make my life a little bit easier, I put him in the please ask me again in 2024 category. Like, I just don't know where to put it. Him, Daniel Jones, and Geno Smith were all in that category for me, which was like, I don't know, please ask me again once I have a larger sample size.
I guess I'm asking this because, it's going to play a part in what he gets. If the Cardinals do decide to go quarterback next year, what he gets traded for next year. Like, is he still a first round draft pick? Is he multiple twos? How does he relate to some of the other quarterback trades that we've seen in recent years? Like that's kind of like where I'm just trying to figure out, where does he still rank in the NFL? Because that's going to play a big part in what he gets traded for.
That's the thing that's so strange, what he ultimately gets traded for. And I don't want to jump the gun on the trading for thing, because again, I think the Cardinals' best course of action would be to support Kyler Murray and give him 2 years to prove that he deserves another contract. Now, granted, they might not do that, but that's what I would choose as the course of action for the Cardinals, because I've seen this man make more career Pro Bowls than Matthew Stafford. However, I think that Kyler Murray's value in a trade has nothing to do with what he will actually get traded for, because the Cardinals have to make the call. If a team is offering a first round pick, but we have to eat $20 million on the contract, is $20 million worth jumping from a second round pick to a first round pick? Is eating an extra $15 million worth an extra third round pick? These are decisions the Cardinals have to make. And by the way, this cheap ass organization has said before that they value money over draft picks, because they could have had a 5th round pick for DeAndre Hopkins if they were willing to eat $14 million on his contract. And they said, screw that. We're just going to cut him. We don't even care about the draft compensation. We could get a free extra draft pick if we just paid this amount of money. And they said, F it, we would just rather protect the money and just cut DeAndre Hopkins outright after the draft. So what Kyler Murray gets traded for has nothing to do with what his actual value is. It's all going to be a game of what leverage do we have, what teams are interested, and how much are we willing to trade off money eating on the contract? Because no one's going to trade for Kyler Murray at $50 million a year. How much are we willing to eat and pay down on the contract in exchange for extra draft compensation, which is kind of the same game the Jets were playing last year with Aaron Rodgers. And you saw how complicated that transaction ended up becoming when it came down to Aaron Rodgers going from the Packers to the Jets. So just because Kyler Murray's worth X amount of money doesn't necessarily mean that's what he's going to make. And just because Kyler Murray is worth X amount of draft compensation doesn't mean that's what the Cardinals may ultimately trade him for.
So the Cardinals, back when Kyler Murray first got drafted, they were also a team on the downslide. And in 2019, his quarterback record was 5-10-1. So again, going into that conversation, whether or not the Cardinals can still win games with him down the stretch, I would say, yeah, I think there might be a couple games that get flipped towards the end of this, and it might knock him out of the top 5. It might not. Looking around again at the other teams that are in that mix, there's certainly teams with more incentive to lose games and worse talent that could potentially jump the Cardinals in this mix. They set themselves up well with only one win through the early part of the season. But yeah, based off his rookie numbers in relation to where this team is talent-wise to where this team was talent-wise in 2019, I think that there's still an opportunity for them to win some games here.
There's definitely a chance for them to win some games here and support Kyler Murray the way that they probably should have supported him from the beginning. But, you know, once he tore his ACL and once everything started going to shit last year, they just decided, well, we got to save some money. So if we're going to pay Cliff Kingsbury and pay Steve Keim to go away and pay Kyler Murray to not play, then we're just going to have a shell organization for a season. So we'll see what happens with the Cardinals. Again, I think the best game plan would be to support Kyler Murray and keep some of these players around. And you know, you've already done the bulk of the hard losing. You're going to have 2 first-round picks this year. Let's see if you can rebuild this thing without having to tear it all to the ground and spend 4 years rebuilding like the Texans did.
What are your expectations for Kyler Murray coming back off of his ACL injury? I'd like to hear what you're thinking about this in the comment section. Leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on all our social medias from Juju and Kyle. Stay safe, happy, and healthy. We'll see you next time.